Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you. Lovely to have you join me here on Solid Ground. This, I believe, is the 120th episode, which I think in itself is quite incredible. Hey, look, there is so much to talk about today, and undoubtedly I won't get through it all, mostly because I'll probably talk too much. But lovely to have you along. It's a live show. This is one of Family First's live shows. In fact, Bob and I do this morning show every weekday morning. Alternative days. So lovely to have you along. If you are watching this, well, you'll be watching this across a multitude of platforms. But if you're on Family First YouTube channel or its Facebook page, your comments will come live to me here in the studio. And regulars know they often tell me how they are and where they are and what the day is like. But also know that if you've got thoughts on any issues or actually a question on an issue that I may not be talking about, put it in the chat and I'll do my best to address it. I will say from the outset, because I can see Rosie's one of a couple of people asking, how am I after last night? And people going, what happened last night? Firstly, all is well, Rosie. What is a straight talk last night? Check it out. Thinking near the end, Bob is asking us, there was four of us on the panel, myself, Christine Rankin, Mel Taylor and Rodney Hyde. And was asking us, and I don't have the clips at the moment because literally it was just last night, around how the media has treated the allegations or the claims from the ex-wife of Chris Hipkins. Now, importantly, we weren't talking about him per se. We were talking about how the media had handled the Chris Hipkins situation with kid gloves. But myself, Rodney, and Christine, along with Mel, shared our own experiences of how the media dealt with us and our families and supposed claims. And if anyone was watching, and Rosie must have been one of them, they'll know that I was very annoyed as I recounted a story of how media had not only misrepresented a situation but gone after my wife. And as Rosie and others might know, I used some colourful language, which I would say, yes, I was frustrated and angry as I thought back to how the media had awfully treated Rachel, myself and the family. Basically just lied is what it was all about. But people have really seen me get rather colourful in language and express a little bit of anger there. But no, I'm good, to put it simply. So if you haven't, go and check out Straight Talk from last night if you want to see Simon's angry face. But to others like Edmund, good morning to you. Lynette, it's lovely to have you along. I see Jackie there, good morning. We've got Darren, good morning too. Now I'll come back to Food Dogs Trucking because actually I've got something to share there as well. Got Nigel, good morning to you. And just some lovely other comments here. So anyway, couple of things, and Food Dogs Trucking was saying it's a beautiful red sky morning, and actually my photo doesn't do justice. This is as I was coming up to the studio this morning. Very much a red sky morning, and as we all know the adage, so there must be some pretty significant weather ahead, because it said my photo doesn't do justice, guys, but it was very red. So anyway, I thought I would share that. And to Irene, lovely to have you along from Ohope Beach, beautiful part of the country. Now, in breaking news, there's been actually a crash of an aeroplane in New York at LaGuardia, if you've ever flown in there as I have. I'm going to show you some very quick footage, and I'll let you know when. It's from a distance, but I know some people might not find it very endearing to see anything crash, but it just quickly illustrates from a distance what happened. But look, keep everyone in your prayers. Obviously, there has been fatalities. Sorry, I say obviously because I've seen the footage and read the news. But basically, a plane, an Air Canada plane, was on the runway. I think it had landed, or maybe it was taken off. I must admit that detail I don't know. But it was going at about 100 kilometres an hour when it collided with a fire truck. And looking at the footage, you can see there seems to be a line of fire trucks or emergency vehicles moving and crossed the runway as the plane was moving. So 2 pilots have died. Remarkably, one of the air hostesses up the front was found still strapped into her chair on the ground. And obviously there's an array of other injuries, as you can imagine. I haven't heard any word about the firefighters who were in the vehicle. And I assume at this point the death toll stands at 2. But that's breaking news. So I'm just going to show you a picture. Again, nothing particularly gross, but I just know some people will find it a little confronting. So if you do, just turn away briefly. But this is the front of the Air Canada planes. You can understand why the pilots tragically lost their life. Pretty dramatic stuff, one has to say. I'm just going to see if I can do this one. So this is the footage. First few seconds you don't see much, except you can see to the right of your picture the line of the vehicles. So you can see there's the vehicles, and in a moment, coming from your left, is the plane. Bang. So absolutely awful. Keep them all in your prayers because, well, they'll need it. I mean, that is just a very, very sad situation. But that's breaking news this morning, as I say. Other breaking news, turning to New Zealand. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the comments here. I see it foggy in Christchurch. Lovely red morning, Robin tells me, in Hamilton. Rosie's also pointing out we're talking around how the media's treated Chris Hipkins. Rosie says, if Luxon's marriage had ended and the ex-wife had posted, the mainstream media would be hounding him day and night. Well, the short answer is yes, and actually as Christine Rankin and Rodney shared their experiences, you can just see the hypocrisy in play. It's very sad to see. Very sad. All round. This, of course, big news from the weekend. Bob had an interview live with Alfred yesterday on Daybreak. So again, that's well worth going and having a look. If you don't know, all our shows can be found on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, all the past shows. So, go and check those out. But big news that Alfred's going to New Zealand first. I mean, in effect, he was pushed out of National. I think it's fair to say that there's been a Conservative squeeze or a squeezing out of the Conservatives from National. There still are some there. Let's be clear, some even in senior roles, but you'd have to say that overall, and I would say, I was in there, wasn't I? I'd have to say that, basically they're being squeezed out, and those left really just don't have much of a voice and an influence. I mean, it's not the Labour Party. We were discussing that last night too. Labour barrels in, if you will, to the culture wars and pushes the boundaries. Other ones legalising abortion, would love to legalise drugs and all of this stuff, all the anti-family dynamics. The centre-right traditionally doesn't do much at all, which is sad. But as I say, Alfred, not a particularly good ending, I think, for him, squeezed out by the party, but a man of deep faith, deep principle, very articulate, very charismatic. And so this is bad news for National, because firstly it's a slap on the face when a former MP goes and joins another party. And this is happening across the board in terms of National, the likes of Hareti Hapango, Jackie Blue. So these are names of the past. Some will know them, some will not. But they've left to join New Zealand First and the Opportunities Party, respectively. So you've got 3 former MPs who are not going back to National. You have Ian Lees-Galloway, a former Labour minister, who's also joined the Opportunities Party. So this does happen, but it's always a slap on the face. And someone like Alfred was a senior cabinet minister. And so, he's saying, I don't want to be part of National. And he clearly finds more of a home in New Zealand First. And this is a big challenge for National because they're not doing very well in the polls. They're tracking in the wrong direction, I'm sad to say. And he is going to draw some of that Conservative vote. He's going to draw some of the Pasifika vote as well. Alfred is well known in both circles. And I think when people are looking towards the political parties, particularly those who lean towards the conservative, the socially conservative side, are going to see him more than they'll see others, unfortunately, in the other parties. So that's going to be a challenge there. I will add, though, Winston's Winston, and it looks like on current polling that he could be the kingmaker again. He could get to decide which side of the political spectrum gets back into power, the left side or the right side. And you'd have to say, or I would say, as a betting man, he'll go and stay with the current coalition. I think he's naturally more towards the centre right, but nothing's a given, even when Winston says it is. So we'll have to see how it all goes, because as I said last night, we were talking about the polls, which has Labour and National, or rather the left and the right bloc, neck and neck. Was pointing out actually that National will be weakened by Alfred's move to New Zealand first, but that in a strange way also presents an opportunity for Labour. So sorry, looking at the comments again. So I thought that was significant news. Switching to overseas, this is a Catholic priest in Iceland, of all places, who is facing a trial because he was on a radio show being interviewed about church matters, and said that he gives spiritual guidance to people who are gay and they don't want to be. So there are people coming to him, or in this case into the church, and talking about their lives and their choices, and he has conversations with them. Well, that set the Iceland Justice Department into a spin, and he is now being investigated by the police under these conversion therapy laws, which is the same as we have here in New Zealand. They're the most hypocritical and paradoxically named law because it's about conversion therapy. So all you're allowed to do is talk about converting someone. And I'm not joking. The conversion laws here in New Zealand are the same in Iceland and around the world. If someone's telling you about their conversion, so particularly in the trans space, if you say raise any questions, you're criminally liable. You are only allowed to affirm someone. And so this affects doctors, nurses, priests, pastors, counsellors, even parents. And so as we pointed out during the debates in Parliament, of which we were shouted down and said we were wrong, which we've not been, we've been proven to be 100% right, you can only affirm somebody in their conversion. And so in this case, for someone to come to him and say, look, I'm not comfortable in my sexuality, or someone who says, look, I'm thinking I'm a woman in a man's body. If this priest or anyone says, well, look, you are a man, you're not actually a woman, or, okay, let's talk about your sexuality, you're liable. And so he's been investigated. Absolutely crazy. And this is how the legal walls are surrounding, if you will, particularly the Christian faith at the moment. And I can see Lisa's asking, could it happen here? Absolutely, that could happen here. New Zealand, under the last Labour government, passed conversion therapy laws, which, they used examples which just have not existed in New Zealand at all. In fact, that's the same playbook around the world. They use these extreme examples of supposed conversion therapy where people are being tied up and beaten, which is already a criminal offence regardless of what the purpose is. But no, the law exists here, Lisa, that if someone comes to you and says, look, I want to talk about my sexuality, and if you don't affirm them, you're in trouble. As 4th Adam saying, how about affirming the gender you were born with? No, not allowed to do that. It's absolutely... Sorry, I'm looking at a car that's come up my driveway, working out who it is. No problems, just trying to work out, is it the painter, the courier, or what? Anyway, just nuts that situation is happening. But I talk about the walls tightening around Christians, because this is from Finland. This is Paavo Räsänen. She's a minister, so a minister, former minister, and an MP. And she's also before the courts. In fact, you can see my interview with her on Family Matters from about 2 years ago now, to be fair. But she is being investigated under war crime legislation for quoting the Bible, for quoting from Romans 1. She challenged her church, the state church in Finland, the Lutheran church, for its support of pride parades. And she was saying, well, look, how can you do that when that doesn't accord with Scripture? That's what she said. And she's been arrested, charged, and at the moment is all the way up to the Supreme Court, fighting effectively for freedom of speech and freedom of religion. So as I say, it's quite maddening to see how, and I mean, you guys will see many other examples of how the legal walls, as I say, are surrounding the Christians. All the while, if you look around overseas, you see the irony, and the UK comes to mind at the moment, the dark irony, actually, that, Christians standing quietly on the street praying, or outside an abortion clinic, or at Speaker's Corner at Hyde Park, are being arrested or moved on. All the while, the UK government is passing new blasphemy laws for Islam. Only one religion. They are allowed to dominate public streets and squares. They're allowed to do and say what they want. It's a very strange dynamic. As I say, it only goes in one direction, this new blasphemy law. It doesn't cover Sikhs and Hindus, certainly doesn't cover Christians. It's very, very strange, to say the least. Food Dogs Trucking is saying that car came up my driveway, must be Bob trying to get into the treehouse. That is true. No, it's not. Yeah, not quite, but it's a very good comment. So anyway, I just thought that was sad and interesting coming out of Finland. But coming back to New Zealand, we have this rather outrageous decision by the courts yesterday. So the courts of New Zealand have decided they're going to go off X, just as the Parliament, not the parliamentarians, but the Parliament decided about a month ago it was leaving X. Now, again, this is quite outrageous because they're again hypocrites. Because the courts, just like the Parliament, said, look, we want to engage with the public more. That's really important for us. Well, X is where lots of Kiwis get their news. It's one of the largest news sources in New Zealand. In fact, there was something like 8,000 people on the X account. But instead, guess where the courts have decided to go? That's right, they're going to Bluesky, that left-wing, rabid little outfit, where at the time of the court switching, they had 43 followers. So from 8,000 Kiwis who subscribed to Courts New Zealand via X to 43 people at Bluesky. This is a blatantly political decision by the courts. It's blatantly prejudicial, just as the Parliament's was. As I say, it's hypocritical because the likes of the courts will say, no, we want to engage with New Zealanders, but actually they don't. They're becoming more and more captured by progressive idealism. And I wrote in a Substack a couple of weeks ago around the Parliament. This is all about control, censorship, and curating the news. Because ultimately, there's a lot of us on X who just use it to get to news. As Fran O'Sullivan herself said. So this is a very senior reporter at the Herald, said you can curate your feeds. There's some terrible stuff on X. But I tell you what, there's terrible stuff on Bluesky. There's terrible stuff on Meta's products like Instagram and Facebook. But the courts have only targeted X because it's probably the largest, well, it is the largest free speech platform where people can actually talk about things, discuss things, and get their news outside of the media. So shame on the courts and those who are making these decisions. We see you and we see the political bias that you're operating with. And we see it much more widely than just the X account. We see the political moralising of the courts by its decision to deregister Family First as a charity while allowing nakedly political groups like Greenpeace to continue. We see the way that the courts are overriding the will of Parliament, reinterpreting laws in ways that the Parliament never wrote down. They're actually undermining the law. And Roger Partridge, he heads up the New Zealand Initiative, has written some really good pieces around this. And the courts are introducing new concepts like tikanga. And again, there's no statute, there's no legislation, there's no parliamentary oversight. Some of the judges are getting far too big for their boots. And the stupidity of what they're doing is they're undermining the very basis of the courts and our constitutional system. Just little cut by little cut. And these are the same courts, by the way, that let that vandal off from Te Papa. So the guy who went in was about 2 years ago into Te Papa and defaced the treaty exhibition. He was let off. They decided, oh, look, it's not worth pursuing. I mean, this is the shame. Very, very wrong. And yeah, probably the best way I could say it, very wrong. And speaking of wrong, this is more of the absolute trash which you read in mainstream media. This was a puff piece the Herald published over the weekend around puberty blockers. It was totally unbalanced. and it was all basically promoting medical lies, facilitating child abuse, I would argue, and pulling out the old tropes which have been disproven. So this is talking about a young teen who wants to transition. Now, the first thing is, if they're already on puberty blockers, the law change or the regulatory change, which has been challenged at the moment, has no impact. So it's a false start. Interestingly, the person, the young one, is estranged from their parent or parents because they don't want to buy in to what's happening. So the child is estranged and is now being looked after by another trans individual who's a building contractor. So some random person has entered into their life and is effectively running and controlling it, not the parents. I mean, that should be raising whopping red flags. The article goes on to promote puberty blockers. It lies blatantly that there's no after effects with puberty blockers. It's all fine. That is medically unsound. And the rest of it, as I say, just runs like a puff piece. And I just really posit the question to you, as much as I'd posit it rhetorically to the Herald, at what point can we and will we hold the likes of reporters at the Herald and the editors account for being accessories to child abuse? Because that's what they're facilitating. What happens to children in this trans dynamic through puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and then mutilating them with surgery is child abuse, endorsed by some of the medical profession and hidden in silence by so many others. So it's actually quite shocking. I've actually just done an interview in recent days with a professor. Diana Kenny's her name, has written a book around this. She's a professor of psychology, and she talks through not only what's actually happening to these young people, but the madness that surrounds it. So very, very sad, to put it mildly, but as I say, to what point do we hold the likes of the media to account for what they're doing? They're facilitating this. They're an accessory to it, and so they should be hanging their heads in shame. Pat is asking, my question would be, we voted in a so-called conservative government, but the red ideologues simply undermine the processes. Yeah, look, that's a really good comment and question from Pat. I think that is part of the problem. I certainly saw it when I was in Parliament, that you're being frustrated often by a bureaucracy and a wider system that tries to frustrate you at every step. And I know, talking to government colleagues at the moment, or former colleagues now, they're finding it very, very difficult to get change through, because as you pointed out, Pat, it gets undermined. But what it takes is a government that actually strongly stands up for its values and pushes hard, leans in, if you will, into these topics, and doesn't let the bureaucrats get their way. Sack the heads of most of the departments and put in better people. When the officials give you wrong advice or go against what the minister is asking, move them on, sack them. I think we need to be more robust, because otherwise we're going to find our country slowly slipping down a morass. In some ways, as we already are. As I see those legal walls that I referenced in Iceland and Finland, what's happening in the UK at the moment, those, in my view, will inevitably come here. There's already a lot of things in place. As I say, conversion therapy, challenges to our free speech laws. They're talking about digital IDs, the latest select committee, talking about under 16-year-olds, but wondering if we need an internet czar to police everything that you guys decide to watch and see. Haul Bob and I before some pseudo-judicial body because we've used a word that caused a hurty feeling. This is all potentially possible if people actually don't, firstly, stand up and vote for good, solid MPs and parties who have a backbone to stand up to these issues. And secondly, once these, hopefully who lean more to the right or the conservative side of politics, actually robustly challenge the very systems which are created to frustrate them. And, it's just, Anyway, I better leave it there because I can see time is ticking away. So, I will leave it there. The car has left my driveway. Who knows who that was? Anyway, guys, lovely as always to have you here and part of the show. As I say, we have lots and lots of content on Family First, so make sure you check it all out. As you know, you can watch, read and listen. You can see all of these things online later. You can read, I can't multitask, as you can see, as I'm looking at this screen here. I can also see comments flying past. So we've got political playback that'll be on Thursday. If you haven't checked out the new show, Counterculture, please do. It's a younger generation of people talking and commenting. And as you know, Bob and I alternate on these mornings. And then, of course, there's Family Matters, the podcast, the current one's with my new colleague, Samuel Bilton. Check that out. A new Family Matters is dropping tomorrow, and I am very excited about who the guest is. It's a big name. I think it's a big name. And many of you will know her. There's the first hint. She talks about childhood, the first 3 years in particular, attachment theory, and the role of parents, and really actually challenges the place of government in early childhood education in children. She is an amazing guest. So look out for that. That will be live tomorrow. But in the meantime, I had better go and get on with the rest of my day. You have a wonderful day. Thank you for being part of Solid Ground. I will see you Thursday morning.